Introduce, please give a warm welcome to Steve.
Well, good evening. We've got a full house here this evening, and I've been very privileged enough to be invited here tonight, and it's always a great pleasure to be able to spend time doing what I love to do, which is to share some of the information, some of the lessons that I've learned over the last several years to people who are hungry, who are looking to advance themselves, that are here basically spending their time, spending their money in order to get qualified to go and pursue something that some of you may actually even go and pursue. Some of us tend to be at a time of our lives where we had nothing better to do, so school was good. Some of us are here because our parents wanted us to be here. We haven't figured out a way to get out of it. And just about everything in between. But as I say, it is a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be invited. I've given various talks around the world on various different subjects. And my passion really is entrepreneurship. Because for me, being an entrepreneur is the ultimate level of job security. People ask me in schools, well, what about job security? What about taking all these risks? It says, well, if you look at it, the ultimate job security is being an entrepreneur. Because other than that, the job security that you have working for somebody else is the ability of that managing director or CEO to run his or her business. That's your job security. And I've been around and seen a lot, done a lot, made a lot, lost a lot, and had a lot of fun. And really just want to bring some of those points into the talk today, and take you on a journey for the next sort of hour or so, and really just get you to think in ways that are outside of the box, get you to ask questions that you rarely ask yourself. Because I've employed many hundreds of people over the years, people that stand in front of me because they've been to a business school, because they've got an MBA, and want to join the queue with everybody else that has an MBA, and really spend so much time working on how to make a great resume, they tend to miss the point. And I don't care, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, what somebody knows. I care who they are. And most of the time we get lost in the focus of how can I increase my resume, how can I increase my knowledge base so that I can bring something to the table based on an intellectual level of repetition of what I think I've been taught, or is my interpretation of it, versus how do I show up and contribute or add value to this company. So they're two fundamentally different types of mindset. And I have absolutely no ability or authority to come here and teach you anything really about the stuff you're learning, because I didn't go to business school. I dropped out of school at 16, and for me, academic intelligence was not something that I was very good at. For me, school just taught me two things. It taught me how to pass tests and work for somebody else. And pretty much neither of those wanted to be on my agenda. And I also looked at the fact that, if I'm going to go out and work for somebody else, by the very definition of doing that, I'm going to be paid less than what I'm worth. Why is that? Why? Because if I'm being paid $1,000 a week by a company, that position, that job, that role, those responsibilities have to be worth more than $1,000 a week, otherwise the company's got nothing in it for them. So by the very definition of going and taking employment, I'm going to be settling for less than what I'm worth. Interesting concept. So what prevents us from being able to go out into the world and embrace that voice, that little voice inside us that tells us we were born to follow our own dreams? What is it that gets somebody up and gets them against all of the odds to go out and create magic? They've got no resources, no money, no education, no access to capital, no great idea, no peer group, no credit lines. But they take their butt off their shoulder and hit a home run, and they go and create magic for the rest of us to be in awe. Versus other people who have all of the resources, or so it would seem. They have the MBA, they have the great idea, they have the team, they have access to credit lines, they have supporting parents, they have whatever it is. They never really get the butt off their shoulder and take a swing at life. So the question has to be asked, what is it that makes the difference between somebody who goes and leaves an example for us to follow, or somebody who leaves a warning on how not to spend their parents' money on education? What is the difference that makes the difference? Because there's so many examples out there of people that had nothing that did everything, and so many examples out there of people that had everything and did nothing. The question is, which one do you want to be? Because the good news is we get to choose. But there's a few little laws, lessons, rules, tips, tricks of the trade that will allow you to make the choice that's right for you, and that's really what I want to do here today. People sometimes refer to me as a motivational speaker, and while I appreciate the sentiment, I'm probably one of the furthest things from a motivational speaker you'll ever see. I'm sometimes a very demotivational speaker. But what I do is I present something in a way that allows you to turn over rocks in your mind that haven't been turned over because you're either too scared, too distracted, or have never really taken the time to look. And that's really the journey that we want to take today. You want me to come here and teach you how to outmarket your competition, set up a business without any money, all that kind of stuff. I can do that in 20 minutes. But you can learn that online. You can learn that in a book. It's very rare you'll have access to information from people who have been able to go through a journey and hopefully be able to survive the other end to pass on some of the mistakes and lessons to you guys. Because if I knew what I do now at your age, although some of you are a little older than me, okay. If I knew what I knew now, I wasn't looking at anyone purposely, you know. If I knew what I knew now back then, I would probably have a very different life. Now, it also begs the question, would that life come with a sense of authenticity if I hadn't gone through the lessons in order to stand there on the other side? Well, that's our choice. But I'd still rather be given the option of taking a shortcut, would you? So, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? What's the defining characteristic? Well, let me head back a little bit. Some people say, well, how did you start? What was your story? And a lot of people are always asking, how did you start when you left school? What was the first thing you did? What kind of phone calls did you make? What kind of deals did you do? And what people are really looking for is certainty over strategy. Right? If you think, well, if I go and do what he did or she did, and I do the same things, maybe I'll get the same results. Well, guess what? That's the same as saying I could have two resumes in front of me with the same qualifications. Am I going to get the same person? Absolutely not. It's not the level of intellectual capacity that defines any level of success and fulfillment in life. And I make a very big distinction between fulfillment and happiness. Because everyone seems to be wanting to chase happiness. Well, guess what? Happiness is simply an emotion. Certain times, don't want to feel happy. I don't want to feel happy at my mum's funeral. Right? But I wanted to feel fulfilled. I wanted to feel authentic. I wanted to feel that there was no unfinished conversations. I wanted to feel as if, it's every parent's wish that their children outlive them. We just never get to choose when, and it's always too soon. But that's a part of life. But happiness is something different. You're chasing happiness. I can give you the secret of happiness in a heartbeat. I might even do that later on. But the challenge is, it's so simple, most people invalidate the profoundness for its simplicity. So let's put happiness aside for a second. Fulfillment comes from a different place. See, as I say, as a human being, we're designed to feel a range of emotions. But fulfillment is an underlying different sense of feeling. You can be fulfilled at peace, you can be fulfilled when you're happy, you can be fulfilled when you're exhausted, you can be fulfilled to an extent when you're somewhat frustrated. So fulfillment and happiness, two different things. So what is the difference? It's down to the inner world. And if one of the messages you want to take out of here today, as one of Pete's laws number one, I've got about 20 Pete's laws number one, is that your outer world follows your inner world. But we'll get to that. You've got chaos going out over here, check your thinking. But we'll get to that. So what happened? I dropped out of school at 16. I told my mum that I shouldn't go to university. She says, why not? I said, I couldn't spell it. I'm like, it's not going to happen. I'm not an academic guy. So I went to work for my father for a very short time. My dad owned a scrap yard, a junkyard, a breaker's yard, where cars go at the end of their life for every 3 days on Shanghai Road. And he owned his own job. And I learned a lot working for my dad. But the main thing I learned is you should never work for your parents because they don't pay you enough. And I was on about £40 a week, about $60. And I was paying my mum £10 board. And I turned around to my dad at the end of the week and I says, hey Dad, I'm leaving at the end of the week. And he asked me a question. He says, what are you getting into? And I said, honestly, I said, well, to be honest, I don't know, but I have a belief. And it's a belief I still have. And that is, if you jump in the deep end, you can only swim. So, I walked away. He paid me my last week's wages, my last £40. I paid my mum £10 board. I paid my friend £10 I owed him. I had my last £20 to my name. Exciting stuff. And I had a look around, and what I did was I went and I bought £15 worth of toys from a wholesaler. I kind of blagged my way into a wholesaler that was quite good at strictly trade only. And I walked in as if I owned the place. And the guy came and says, excuse me, can I help you? And I'm walking up and down the aisles, taking notes. He says, no. He says, well, do you have an account here? I said, well, not yet. He says, well, are you a trader? I said, well, yeah, actually I am. I'm a market trader. I specialise in toys. I've got stalls at Nottingham and Newark and Peter and these high kind of class stores. I said, I've been using so-and-so, and I mentioned the next one down in the other pages. And I said, but I was on the store last Sunday, and somebody recommended you. I thought I'd come and have a look. Now, for me, I was telling the truth in advance. I've gone through a few little value shifts since then, but that's where I was at. And so I used that. I bought my first £15 worth of toys. And do you know what my market research was? Would I play with that if I was a kid? That's it. Sometimes you've got to go with what you got. And I bought £15 worth of toys. And I drove to a car boot, and I had a Mini at the time. Now, this is before Minis were cool. Right? This is the old Mini. Because the rule was I could drive anything in the scrapyard that nobody else wanted to buy. So you can imagine the kind of cars. And I'm 6'3". I don't fit in the Mini. Right? I would take the front seat out so I can sit in the back and drive. Yeah? So I drove to this car boot sale, and I couldn't afford a little table, so I got a blanket that my mum gave me, and I put my blanket on the floor. I remember going and winding the window down and handing my last £5 through the window, wondering if I'd ever see it again. And I drove onto the field, and I laid my blanket down, I put my toys on there, and everyone else had got like fancy stalls and stuff, and I basically just stood there and wondered what happened. Anyway, at the end of the day, I sold all my toys, and I sold them for £30. And I went back the next week, and I bought £25 worth of toys, and I put £5 on a car boot sale. My mum gave me credit on the board because she saw I was trying to do something. And I sold them for £50. And again, I went back, and I built up and up over about 6 or 7 weeks until I got just about enough stock to cover a market store. And then I started doing markets, and then Sunday markets, and then my mum suggested something about toy parties. And I heard of Tupperware parties, and something we're not allowed to mention here called Summer's parties, but I don't know what they were. Right? And so I'm like, okay, what I did was, I wanted to do a poster. Now this is 1980, right? There was no desktop publishing. I mean, bear in mind that the world didn't have a way to organize data en masse until Windows 95. Right, so there was desktop publishing just didn't exist. So what I did was I wanted to do a poster. So I got newspapers out of the trash and I cut letters out and stuck them on. It looked like a ransom note. Right? And it was like, hold a toy party for Christmas, earn extra money, blah blah blah. And I used to drive around the school gates at like 3 o'clock when the mothers were waiting to pick up the kids and the parents and hand them these leaflets. And I was Pete the Toy Boy. I was 17. That was my catchphrase. And so I started doing toy parties. And I remember I left my dad in June. And by October, I'd made my first 1,000. And I was so chuffed. Do you know why? Because I'd made it and not earned it. And there's a big difference. You see, you earn money by being able to give somebody, an employer, 40 hours a week of your time or whatever it is. But that can be taken away in a heartbeat. You learn how to make money, nobody can take that toolbox away. It's a different skill set. So I was very happy about being able to generate or find a way to be able to generate some money, and my aim was to get established for Christmas, cash in on the toy demand at Christmas, and then go on to something else. And I did. I went over to Germany. I think the wall had just gone down between East and West Germany. It was a big black market for Western goods. And I went over to see what I could get up to. And yeah, I think I spent half my toy profits on beer and not all else. So I didn't really do well in Germany, but I came back and somebody was reading, reading a book on fitness. And fitness is one of my passions. I try and keep myself in shape. And so I was reading this book and I'm like, this is pathetic. It was like how you could look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in 3 minutes a day using 3 chairs and a towel. Right? But people were paying $20 for it. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I could write a better one than this. And a little voice went off in my head and said, well, why don't you? So I did. So I sat there and with a pencil in my bedroom, and for about 2 weeks I scribbled out a book. And I remember driving to a freelance secretary at the time that had one of these newfangled computer things, and giving them, she typed it up on this like modern floppy disk. And I took it to the printers, and I got it printed, and I went to learn everything I could about mail order. And I liked the mail order model at the time. Very much no internet. Yeah. Some of you mean no internet, it's been around forever. So I went to the reference library, and I basically got books on mail order and started to learn as much as I could. Why? Because I didn't need an office. I couldn't afford a premises. I didn't want to count on footfall and people. I could hit 100,000 people in one advert. It's low cost, high margin, you get your money up front. It kind of made sense. And so I set up a mail order business and then added a few more products to it. And that was, again, 1989, somewhere around there. And since then, what was that, 24 years ago? Something like that. But since then, there's been probably about 25 companies. Some of them worked. Some have failed majestically. Some have wiped me out. Some have been great. Some have made millions. Some have lost millions. And some really should have stayed ideas when I was drunk. But through that whole journey, I learned a lot. And I learned some very important lessons that I want to share with you today. And that is about living the life of an entrepreneur. Because the life of an entrepreneur has nothing to do with your resume and what you learned in school. That's an entry ticket to validate some level of intelligence, and I'm not invalidating in any way a level of education. It's important. I wish sometimes I had an MBA, but again, unfortunately, I couldn't spell it. So, from my perspective, I sit on the board at INSEAD, by the way, INSEAD Business School in Paris, the campus here in Abu Dhabi, and I'm the only non-graduate they've ever invited. I feel very proud to be the token idiot. And so I look back, okay, what is the difference that makes the difference? What is the #1 character trait that as an entrepreneur you need to cultivate in order to go out and create a result? Well, I've been asked this question over many years, interviews, TV, radio. What's the #1 thing as an entrepreneur that you need to have? Is it passion? Is it discipline? Is it focus? Well, all of those things are useful. And they're powerful hostage traits. But an athlete can have discipline. A housewife can have passion. A dentist can have focus. What's the defining characteristic of an entrepreneur? And after nearly a quarter of a century of being one, I'd probably say that, while I say that there's never one thing, just like the body, there's no one magic thing. The body's an orchestra, not an instrument. But if I was to distill it down to the #1 defining characteristic of an entrepreneur versus anything else, it would be the ability to write down what I'm saying. I just saw that nobody had a pen, so I can't. It's the ability to handle uncertainty. The ability to handle uncertainty. Now, let's look at that for a moment. Let me ask you a question. Where does certainty exist? Where does certainty exist? Come on, guys, play with me. Sorry?
In facts.
In facts. Has there been a history of facts that have been superseded by new information that invalidated the fact?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where else can certainty exist?
Structured environment.
Sorry?
Structured environment.
A structured environment. Okay. Have you ever seen a structured environment that can survive nature when nature's upset? Okay. Where else?
Death.
With certainty? Death. Okay. They used to say death and taxes, but then everyone moved to Dubai. Death, I mean, again, depends how. I mean, you guys seem a pretty smart and interested group, and I don't know which way my talks usually go. I don't show up with any notes. I don't show up with any planning. And in fact, I was just driving home and my iPhone reminded me I should be here. So no. But death is inevitable. You know, that's probably about the only level of certainty that, you know, everything that is physical, its destination is non-physical. True? By the very definition of you being physical, your destination is non-physical. Case closed. Unless somebody's invented something new I've not caught up with yet. And living forever? Oh, how boring would that be? So, if the essence of life, the essence of who you are, has to be non-physical. Because if you're physical, your destination is non-physical. So, question, since you're all exceptionally smart, how much non-physical can you fit on the head of a pin? All of it. Told you anything. You see, who we are, I told you earlier, that I don't look at what is on your resume. I don't care what you know, I care who you are. Because that is the defining factor in every situation. Who do you show up as? When the chips are down, who defines you? And the essence of you is invisible. Who are we? Here's an interesting question. Who are you without your name? Who are you without your name? So we never stop to ask these kind of questions because we're scared of where it might lead. But if the essence of life is non-physical, and the essence of who we are has to be non-physical, because the essence of who we really are is invisible. Are we this body? No. How do I know that? Because I have a very different body now than when I was 6 years old, but it's still me. Right? And this is going to change. Make it more handsome, I doubt it. That was never on the list. So, if the essence of you is non-physical, what makes you you? It's not your haircut. It's not what you drive. The essence of who you are is your personality, your sense of humour, your intelligence, your values, your skills. Who you show up as, your character. That is the essence of you. If I was to take the essence of you and all that stuff out and stick it in this guy, you'd be him, you just look different. Right? So the essence of who we are is not physical, it's invisible. What does that mean? That means that everything in our life that happens as a result of who we are, not what we know first. Now what we know can be useful. But let's take that back to what I said. The essence of being an entrepreneur is the ability to handle uncertainty. And when we actually realize that, guess what, guys? There is no certainty in life, certainty in death. And most people are afraid of that. Why? Because they think death is the opposite of life. It's clearly not the opposite of life. Death is simply the opposite of birth. That's a whole different saying. So, if the ability to handle uncertainty is paramount, then why are we so addicted to certainty as a culture in 21st century reality? The essence of who we are embraces uncertainty because it understands there is no certainty in life. The only difference is the tree doesn't stand there worrying if it's going to get blown down by a storm tomorrow. It just is. So, the ability to handle uncertainty, what does that look like in real life? It looks like we need to take some risks. Would everyone agree that to be an entrepreneur, you probably need to take some risks? Right. Well, let me share a little story with you, if I may, on everything that I learned about taking risks in a 60-second experience. Think you're up for that? Still with me, guys? Marvellous. How many people here, and it seems to be quite a mecca and quite a hub for this activity in the region, but how many people here have ever been crazy enough to jump out of a perfectly good aeroplane? Okay, skydive Dubai, here we go, right? Excellent. Crazy people. So, for me, I always wanted to be a skydiver. Now, from the age of 6 years old, when my mum caught me jumping out of my apple tree with an umbrella, she thought that there's some sort of clue that's going to be going on here that says, you know, what this guy's going to do on play with. So I just thought it was the most incredible aspect of being able to free fall from thousands of feet high. You know, people for in 100,000 years of human civilization probably wondered what that felt like. Or probably knew what it was, but didn't, weren't around much longer to tell people. So, I want to be a skydiver. So, I live in England, or used to, I'm English. Anyone been to England? You can't, I'm sorry about that. You can't skydive in England because there's no sun. I'm a sunshine guy. That's one of the reasons I moved to Dubai. I like sunshine. I didn't see the sun until I was 12. And so I thought, well, you can't jump in and get your license in England. Let's go to America. So I flew to Florida 15 years ago to get my license. And I thought to do skydiving it'd be easy, right? I mean, you jump out of an airplane, you pull a cord, and gravity does the work. Like that. So I get there, and I'm faced with something I wasn't expecting. And that something I wasn't expecting was going back to school. I had to have 8 hours of ground training, brain frying. It was everything about my equipment, how it worked, what would happen if it went wrong, aerodynamics, plane entry-exit procedures, hand signals in the air, landing drills, wind pattern. I mean, it was overwhelming. Some of you probably know the feeling when you first signed up for the MBA. But here's the thing, the emotional route that tends to happen is that overwhelm leads to confusion, which leads to inaction. In other words, we learn so much, we do what? Nothing. See it all the time. People spend their entire academic careers trying to learn more. I've got my master's, so now I need my PhD. Go look, it's everywhere. But peel back the onion, let's get a little smarter. What's actually going on? Fundamentally, in some cases, not all, but in majority of cases, what's actually going on is what people are looking for is certainty. Now, if it's your passion to be academic and you want to throw yourself into academia and become a professor and follow that kind of route because that's your calling, your truth, that's great. But if what's keeping you in school and wanting to get you in the next level, followed by the advanced level, followed by the master's, followed by the trainer, followed by the trainer, etc., then the biggest challenge, so we just missed the secret to life, sorry. The biggest challenge is that most people who are addicted to certainty because they're running on a hamster wheel to nowhere, and the fundamental reason is one particular pattern that's running them unconsciously, and that is that they think that by getting more skills, it will give them more certainty. Wrong, but thank you for playing. You see, if you're looking for skills to replace certainty, you will be on a hamster wheel to nowhere. Because what will happen is you will finish your course thinking that it'll give you the certainty, but it's still not there, because skills will never replace certainty. Skills, trying to get certainty from out here by somebody else's validation on what score you get on a test, will never give the fundamental feeling inside that you require in order to step up, have a level of certainty that can take on the world. Case closed. So, because we try and learn so much, we get cram our minds, we get overwhelmed, and then we get confused and we don't act, or we kind of settle down and we get good at something, but we still don't have that level of certainty we thought it would give us, because that's a fundamental shift in identity which doesn't come with somebody else's validation on a test. So we go and sign up for the next one. I just want to do a little bit more. I'll go and work for a consultancy group for 2 years and get my feet wet. Give me a break. Then we get to 65 and look over our shoulder and think, wow, what happened? So I get all of this information, and I've got massive uncertainty right now. And the challenge is this: if you have uncertainty about a test, what's the worst thing that can happen? You fail the test. What's the worst thing that can happen in skydiving? You bounce. It's a technical term. So, I had all this information, and I'm like, hang on, whoa. 8 hours of everything that I wasn't prepared for. I just want to go back to the hotel, reread my notes, and kind of get comfortable. Now, what am I looking for, guys?
Certainty.
Certainty. Spot the patterns. You want to get good at life, you want to get good at working life on life's terms, get good at spotting patterns within yourself and others. There's only so many of them. So I spend probably about a month of my life every year for the last 15 years working with drug addicts, homeless, suicide, abuse cases, trauma, on psychotherapeutic intervention. And I'd have to be an idiot, which most of the time I am, and not be able to spot patterns. I'm not a qualified psychologist, but I've never lost a suicide, touch wood, in 15 years, because you get good at understanding people. Because we're all made of the same stuff. So I know how you feel when you feel happy, so I know how I feel when I feel happy. I know how you feel when you feel frustrated, so I know how I feel when I feel frustrated. We're made of the same stuff. So for me, I was looking for certainty, which is what most people do most of their lives. Certainty in relationships, certainty in their finances, certainty that everyone's going to like them, certainty that they're good enough, certainty, blah, 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 blah. Right? Good luck with that. And anyway, so I just wanted to go home, back to the hotel, and at that moment the instructor comes running out of the course and says, "Hey Pete, guess what? There's one slot left for the last jump of the day, the Sunset Load. We're on it." And so anyway, I put on my jumpsuit, I get on my rig, and I walk to the plane. And on your first jump, you're not fixed like a tandem. On your first solo jump, you have two instructors that jump out with you. So you jump out of the plane, and the two instructors go out, and they fall either side. And I guess if you forget to pull your cord, they're a bunch. Right? So anyway, I get on the plane, and there's like 30 other experienced skydivers, and there's one other guy who's also on his first jump. So he's sitting there with his two instructors, and I get on with my two instructors, and the rest of the plane's full. And I look across at this guy, and I can tell it's his first jump. Not just because he's got two instructors, but he's like white as a sheet and not breathing. So I'm like, okay. They bolt the doors, we put on a belt, we hurtle down the runway, the propellers are kicking in, and we start taking off, and we head up to altitude. We get to about 10,000 feet. A couple of kilometers above the clouds. And the red light comes on, which means that we're getting ready. And there's an excitement in the planes, there's an energy. And then we keep circling about 5 more minutes, everyone's doing kit checks. And and I'm looking at this other guy, still not breathing. And anyway, the green light comes on, they open the door, there's an icy blast that comes in. And everybody gets up, all the experienced skydivers get up and they head to the door and they start backflipping, somersault, high five, and they've gone into the abyss. Crazy, Pete. This is me, my two instructors, and the other guy and his two instructors left in the plane. Anyway, he's nearest the door, he goes first. I'm happy with that. He gets up, and his whole physiology and everything, right, is just like, I'm thinking, this guy's not going to do it. I know, the instructor either side, they ask a question, it's a legal question on your first jump in the US, for insurance purposes, they say, "Are you ready to skydive?" And you've got a positive answer, right? And you go, "Are you ready to skydive?" He's like, I'm like, this guy's not going to go, right? "Are you ready to skydive?" Anyway, he stands there, he looks in, looks out, takes a breath, unpeels his fingers from the handle, closes his eyes, and jumps. Back inside the plane. I'm thinking, it's not going to happen, right? Anyway, but these instructors, they're professional, they've done this before, they're crazy people that quiet skydive for their birthday when they're drunk. Now they can handle all this. So anyway, they get him back in state, and it's okay, they get him more empowered, and they change his physiology, and they change his focus. Anyway, now he's ready. So he walks up to the door. And as soon as he looks down, his whole physiology changes again. And they go, "Are you ready to skydive?" Nothing.